So good to be with you again this week. And I give thanks to God that you've made time for this to serve your people well. Last week we talked about the why of small groups, and this week we'll talk about the how and talk about as facilitators, we want to be mindful of the life of a group.
Okay, hi everyone, glad you're back. Nice to see you. So tonight we're going to talk about what makes a good facilitator and what a facilitator really is. And then the stages of small groups, from forming to storming and then adjourning. And then we're going to talk about, I think, what's on a lot of our minds, Zoom and online groups and maneuvering all of that. Okay, so I think we've been starting this way, and I think it's a great way to start. So we're going to have Jordan will start and read us some scripture. And the first time after she reads it, we'd like you to put in the chat what word or phrase catches your attention. And then John's going to read it for us, and it will be, what does this passage suggest about the ministry of small group facilitation? So with that being said, we can start.
Thanks, Lee. A reading from Ephesians. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love.
So now we'll read it a second time, and then what does this passage suggest about the ministry of small group facilitation to you?
A reading from Ephesians. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love.
So what does this passage suggest about the ministry of small group facilitation?
So what is a facilitator? I think we all kind of know, but I think the main thing and the one's probably stumbling block for a lot of people wanting to do it is their fear they're not an expert. But you're not a teacher. Facilitators aren't teachers. They can be content experts only because they happen to be, but sometimes it's best maybe not to be. That is not the role of the facilitator. You're really a guide. You're there to help the group form and work together, get along, to accomplish whatever you plan to accomplish or study what you're studying, and keep focus. And pay attention to, I think, everyone individually and then the interactions of people together. And that's always different. Except for when you have to, in terms of giving instruction, especially in the beginning. Really, a facilitator should do the least of the talking in the group. I like 25-75 is about right. I mean, it's good to participate, because then, you're just, that can be uncomfortable. If a facilitator is just watching you think that you're doing it wrong, or you have to participate too, but don't over participate, because you because you need to be paying attention to those who aren't, or those who maybe participate too much. So you have other things going on all at the same time. But yeah, your job is to just keep the group going and encourage, just encourage moving forward, moving deeper. Actually, it's deeper what I think good facilitation is. I mean, you can just talk about all kinds of things, but if you can be aware of going deeper, and then we're going to talk about that. That's going to be something. So we can move on to what everybody here, what some word salad here. And we did last week a little poll of what qualities do folks here see as a good facilitator.
So just like last week, go to the website pollev.com/EDAL100, or and there you'll be posed a question, or you can text EDAL100 to 22333 to join, and then text your message. So what are the qualities of a good facilitator? We prepped you a little bit for that. As you're doing that, I want to mention that it's somewhat countercultural for Episcopalians not to have an expert in the room and think that the answers are going to be coming from someone else. But spiritual growth comes from the combination of outside information, but also internal growth and internalizing that. Organized, empathy, gentle. All right.
Okay, so well, everything you said was spot on. Yeah, as the facilitator, you're with and you're for the group. You keep, I mean, as a facilitator, you really do keep your eye on the process, whatever you're doing, be it EFM, which I'm most versed with, but even Bible study. I do like also sharing responsibility, but not in a way where you're delegating and not turning over responsibility. You're still ultimately always a facilitator, but giving people tasks like in EFM we have different parts of the evening, and we share all those, and they're pre-assigned, and I think it's good to be clear about that from the beginning that you're going to do that, and organized and how you do it. I don't recommend saying, okay, we're all going to share a little bit, and Jenny, will you pray for us? Without ever saying in advance that she'd be praying, or you have to lay that out first, because that can be very discouraging and shocking. So I like to have even a schedule, so we know each week, so someone can prepare. I wouldn't just leave it to, oh, well, we'll all be praying. And then so when you get to the prayer, everyone's thinking, is he going to call me? Are they going to call on me? I don't prefer that. I think it's nice so people can prepare. Some people don't care, but there are quite a few people, and as we get to personalities, that like to know in advance if they may be doing something other than simply participating. And in the Bible study I lead, we just go around the room. We read to where we're comfortable and just keep round robining, because I think that too just gets everyone involved. Questions, be brief, succinct, and clear when you ask a question, and make them open-ended. I find whenever you do books, most people at first need to get off their chest their impression of the book. That's fine. Don't let it go on too long, but don't shut it down, because they're gonna do it, and then get into the meat of the conversation and keep those open in the questions. And again, I like to focus on what you thought. What did you feel? What did you experience? Those are the type of questions, open-ended, but they get into emotions, not what did you think? What would you do different? That's really not in a Bible study, in EFM, in any of the groups we may be doing, that distracts from the actual mission at hand, which is always, I think, growing spiritually, looking towards a hope of a situation. That's where we want to go. We don't want to go into the weeds of, well, we know this, we don't know, we like this, we don't like that. That I don't think is the type of route we're looking for here in these intentional small groups. We can go on to the next slide.
You made me think of something, though, Lee, which is something that I learned a number of years ago. The difference between these two questions. What do you think? And what did you notice? So let's say that I was confronted with the distinction between those two questions by a rector who was trying out new liturgy. And so instead of having somebody, when they left the liturgy, say, so what do you think? That engages judgment and engages the head. Instead, what did you notice? Which actually engages the heart in a non-judgmental way. So one thing that you can do in your small groups when you're engaging in new materials is not ask that what do you think question. What did you notice? You know, put on that extra hat of exploration and curiosity. So just wanted to mention that one.
That's good. No, that's true. Yeah, and to that, you know, here, it's important to acknowledge when people do say something, a good point, or can you expound on that if you know you think there's more there. I think back to what Jennifer said, another thing, and I've seen this in curriculum, you know, what excited you, what confused you, concerned you, what was your aha moment. Those are, I think, also good entryways into a discussion that are more heart than head. And they also, and we'll talk about this, help give parameters to the evening, because we have, you know, a limited amount of time in any of these groups, and usually more than one topic of conversation to address. Maybe not in the Bible study, but so you want to have maybe, you know, tell us, you know, what excited you and what gave you pause in this, and go around. And those are just examples, but just give some boundaries there, so you just won't be going off with the what did you think or what did you feel. Give a little more specific emotions, and like just two. If you have more time to.
Yes, yeah. Sue asked a really good question in the chat. Can you give more examples of affirming contributions like thank you, or that's a good point? So how would you, what else can you say but to encourage conversation in an affirming way and get people to go deeper?
Yeah, it's like I thank you. Or it's like, you know, that's a really, you know, that's a really good point. What, you know, what others, how others react to that? You know, I hadn't thought of that. I mean, it kind of just comes natural. It's like, you know, like wow, you know, or that's a perspective I hadn't considered. What do the others in the room think of that? I mean, that's always good, because you especially, you know, if the conversation may not be going good, and even if it is, and again, we're going to talk about personality types, and you can use these to move a conversation along. You'll have some people that may talk quite a bit. I can guarantee you will have some people that will talk quite a bit, and you have some people that won't. I've never ever been in any small group where that is not present. Now, there's some other personality types that are present, but they may not always be. But I can guarantee there'll be someone that will talk a lot in different ways, and people that won't. And that is a key to facilitating, and including those people that aren't, because that doesn't mean they're not engaged. And we'll talk about this. It's their personality, but they can become engaged very quickly if you don't pay attention. And so definitely acknowledging and acknowledging, and it's good to acknowledge specifically when they talk. Thank them. It's from their perspective, and maybe again an entryway into discussing that more, because you may really have to prod some of these people. They may, if they don't talk a lot, they don't talk much either. So you may need to get, try to prod in, can you expound on that? Before your people who talk a lot expound on it, because they will.
Okay.
And I think that it's good to, as I said there, that's a good slide, to allow some silence. Sometimes I think it's great to ask a question and say, now let's everyone take a minute or two and think about it. And you will have people who just start talking. And I as a facilitator, is like, wait, let's take a minute. I'll talk about what those personalities are called, but it's good for everybody. And it's just especially good for your quiet folk to think about it, but it never hurts to take this time to think. Yeah, I mean, yes and no questions, complicated questions. I have been in small groups where, the facilitator come with an exercise, and it'll be 3 parts with 5 bullet points for each part. And then you do the first one, but then the third one, but then you take 2 from the second one, and then you really can do it any way you want. That is terribly confusing. Some people are like, oh yeah. There are other people that they get confused. They like the structure. So be very clear if you're bringing exercise, or I mean, I've seen complicated icebreakers like that, like simple icebreakers. Like, who is your patron saint? Something quick. They don't have to be a real saint. It can be fictional. That was actually one we had last night. I love that one. But not like 3 parts with 5 little bullet points. Keep the exercises you give, you're coming up with them, or even if you're finding them, keep them simple, because you want to get deeper. You don't want to get just information dumps from people. So yeah, you want to go with emotions, things that are thought-provoking, controversial. I think that's fine. We'll talk later, maybe how to do some of that, and how to shut it down. But that's good. You don't want to shy away from it, but you don't want it to evolve into side picking, right and wrong. We as Episcopalians believe that is not how you speak in small groups. You speak for yourself. But again, we'll talk about that.
I want to I was thinking of giving an example of a good question and maybe a bad question. So if you're doing a study of Philippians, so I used to teach middle school. I might ask my middle schoolers, like, where was Paul when he was writing? But that's a one right answer question, although it's not quite all one right answer. We're not quite sure where he was from. But you might ask a question that is both emotional and a connecting, which is asserting Paul was separated from his community that he loved so dearly for years when he was writing the letter to the Philippians. How do you see how Paul cared for his community in relationship to you and in your faith community? So that's a connecting question. It asks you to think about Paul and his response to a community in which he's separated, but then takes it a little bit further into that emotional question about how are you? And then that's exactly where what we're supposed to be doing, that's where the richness of the Bible is, I think, is when God's story becomes our story, when we enter that story. So that's an example of a connecting question.
Very good.
Anything we're going to be talking about? Do you want to see more about controversial questions? Ron has asked.
Sure. I can do it now. So it's the hard questions. I mean, like in EFM, we'll like abortion is wrong. Satan is real and doing evil in the world today. I mean, they're tough. They're deep questions. I think those are good But the one thing to watch, controversial questions, is any politicized. And when I was going to talk this when we get to norms, I will again because it's important. When you're talking about our faith and Christianity, you can avoid, if you're going to go deeper, talking broad politic. Jesus was politic. He talked about how to live in community. It's politics. But you don't, and you shouldn't. I don't encourage party politics. That's not the way to go in any of the small groups, because that draws sides. It's not about drawing sides. It's about looking at controversial issues, deep issues of concern, of even God and creation and conservation. Those are fine conversations. Those are good conversations. But bringing in who votes for what or who's against what, that is not productive because that's not where we're going. We're not choosing right or sides. We're learning about how we and others think about things that are important to our life and how it connects to our spirituality and our discipleship. How as disciples we can heal the world of its many problems, or try. Mm-hmm. And so the topics are important. It's just don't devolve into right and wrongs. It's out there that there clearly in Christianity there's a broad spectrum, but I think as a facilitator you want to watch, those are saying, well, these Christians always do this, and these Catholics always do this, and watch that. I think that's not that doesn't really go to depth. That goes to judgment, and I guess that's what I'm looking for. Try to avoid or poke holes in judgmental statements. Get people to flesh it out in maybe a non-judgmental way. It's like what are you feeling, as opposed to just saying it's wrong. What about that?
Or what are the values that we are?
What are the values that are, yeah, exactly.
The particularities, right? Getting to at values. But I think that's a really hard thing to do these days. And I think, when you get to norms, I'm sure you'll get to this, which is common norm is we will agree to disagree, yeah, and remain friends, and also hold one another in prayer. Will get you through those controversial questions, yeah, and that commitment to community. So I think that really goes into norms.
Yep.
Move on?
Yes, please. So this is great. This Jennifer talked about the book. This really is true for any group I've ever been in. And we're going to talk about all these specifically. You can see there's a lot under them. Of course, if you start a group, you got to form a group. So there's forming. Then there's just gelling is a storming period. You work that out. And you go into a normative stage of how you work together. Then you work together. You're performing, and something that is important is adjourning. It can be graduations. It can just be the ending of a ministry, which I think is one of the things that I found in church we do the poorest. But I'll talk about that when we get to it. So let's start with, we can't adjourn until we form.
Okay, and before I move on, I just want to mention when I send this out, the top, if you notice, there's a blank line in between the first set of bulleted points and the second set. The first set defines what that category is, what's going on in the small group during each of those stages. The second part is what is the role of the facilitator. So the example would be informing. People tend to be polite and positive. They might be anxious. It's the role of the facilitator to provide a comfortable environment to set clear expectations. So there's an example.
Yeah, I think on the slides we have them side by side. So.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, so the forming, at first people are excited at different levels. It can be nervous excitement. It can be just being in a group. And they're curious. They're curious, why they're there, about the people around them, and about, I think, how it's going to be led. So you as facilitator are to be welcoming, be comforting, And I think, but be clear. I think if, especially if you don't have a curriculum, say, what the design, what the intent is of the group, and talk about that, and make sure they understand that this is why they're there. They might think, oh, this isn't what I thought this was. We want to do that early. And then setting expectations, and let's go to the next slide, because I think the biggest expectations come here. So in any group, you should establish group norms. And this is one of many. And I strongly encourage you to add to these. This is from the Kaleidoscope group. And this is now, I think, what a lot of education for ministry groups use. We go over it. Again, you can just simply write your own. They basically, in a nutshell, they're all about, about respect. Basically, don't be a jerk and then go around spreading other people's business. That's really what it counts to. And so yeah, you have to be responsible to the group and to yourself.
Come prepared. Is that what?
Come prepared. Yeah, that's what I say. Yeah, I mean, responsible is come on time. Come prepared, and if you're not, be honest. I think that's there are just some nights where people come like, I didn't have time. I was doing this, but I want to be with you, and that's perfectly fine. If they come and there's no engagement and they're just like playing Candy Crush, that's not responsible. That's a whole different realm. So, and again, if always set out, as a facilitator, I always ask that people, if they're going to be late, I understand, that's not a problem, but please text. So, because especially as the group goes on, you worry about one another. If someone just didn't show up, you want to make sure they're okay. People know you're connected to this community. So in the same way you'd let a friend or family know if you're late, let your group know. Empathetic, I mean, that builds over time, but yeah, be empathetic to those around you. That's why you're there. You grow by hearing from others and feeling from others. That really is amazing. Sensitive to other people's styles, which we'll talk about. It's an amazing way to learn about yourself, is just being sensitive to how other people communicate. I've learned a lot that way, just being cognizant of there are just different ways of communicating. Ponder, that kind of goes back to like pause a little bit. Think about, don't to the best of your ability, when someone's talking, don't be spending your time on what you're going to say, either what you had planned to say or what you're going to rebut. Ponder it a little bit. Let it, wash over you. Take some time, and that's examine. You might want to why am I thinking this? Why? When you're pondering, then examine, well, why really am I thinking this? And then you'll know whether you should speak or not speak. Maybe sometimes this isn't the point. This isn't time to make the point that I think is so cool, because it's not moving the conversation forward. And we'll talk about that personality too. Confidentiality. That's a big one, and it's just oddly confusing one to some people. Confidentiality, unless it is a secret group, which I don't think we're running any secret groups, it does not mean you can't say that you're in such and such a group with so-and-so. That's fine. You can talk about what you've learned. I mean, the idea is to hopefully get people to join your group. So you want to be excited about it and talk about it. What you don't want to do is tell very personal things. It's like, I couldn't believe that what Jennifer said about the rector. It's like, that's super uncool. And it happens. It has happened in churches, and it can cause a great deal of problem. And we are a very small church. There are not 6 degrees of separations between most Episcopalians. I learned on my rector search. So yeah, those are the type of things people share, and other things. I mean, it depends on the group. You can learn very intimate things about people. I think I touched on this last week. Things that they may not have shared with even close friends. So that's the type of stuff you don't attach names to. You don't have to say who said what in any circumstance, but you can say what you've learned. That's perfectly fine. And it goes to trust. You will not go deep if you don't trust each other. And that, I think that's built over time, but that comes, if you do all the above, you'll get the trust. Yeah, you will. I mean, liking any of the RESPECs, you won't get the trust, because people won't feel that you are part of the group enough, that you're sensitive enough, that if you're just espousing, what you think in spite of what anyone else can say to you, you won't build the trust. And if it's, as the facilitator, that's what you have to watch for, if anyone is trying to pull in any one direction, or yeah, that pulls the group down. And again, we'll talk about this. So the next one is storming, and that's where you get to know each other, and that's where you get to know how different types of people work. And yeah, I think this is probably the most important part of facilitating in the beginning, because you can lose the group at this point. You can bring them back, but this is where it's going to happen. Your first couple of sessions are going to be great. Usually, everyone's into it. You got some quiet people. You don't know why they're quiet. It's cool. But by the time you start seeing how certain people are, that's what you should be spending your time on, watching how people are communicating. We'll talk about this. It's a little harder on Zoom to see body language, but you can you can look if your group's not too big. And I really don't recommend any. We've talked about this. Any group over 12. 8 is great on Zoom. You can kind of see if people are checking out. You can't see eye rolling too much, which is never a good thing, but it happens. You can do that. So yeah, you just want to be cognizant, but you want to be learning how your folks are saying what they're saying, and how they go about saying it. True conflict, you want to direct, you want to address quickly, if it gets to that. Let's go through the different types of people, then I can circle back about what happens. So in general, this is a great resource that will be in your toolbox. I love the image, the invisible suitcase, because we all come with our own baggage. So true. Of course, these aren't all their personalities, but it's just a really good setup. You have the extreme external processor. You have the extreme internal processor. You have sometimes the extremely lonely. I think that was actually asked. Something similar to that was asked last week. You have the Bible, theology, liturgical know-it-all. You have the absentee participant, and you have the griever. And then you may have sometimes where you may have to consult for pastoral care. So let's go to our first two. So these are like sometimes two sides of the same coin. You have external processors, basically, and I would say I'm one. They're people who talk to think. In and of itself, it's not bad. Where you as a facilitator have to watch is like, how much time are they taking, and how much extra they're bringing to the actual question at hand. And that's where you really want to have these questions of feelings, reactions, as opposed to just knowledge dumps. Because they kind of have to go through, they're going through their whole mind of things they know to get to things they want to say. You move it, I think, quicker into feelings and emotions, reactions. That can help. They can still talk a lot. I know sometimes we ask in education for ministry people to give personal stories. I would say, you will find with an external processor, they'll start with, well, there was one time where on a Tuesday, no, maybe it was a Wednesday. It was Thursday with my supervisor. Well, it wasn't my immediate supervisor, but it was someone who, it just, they're getting out all the kinks of, that's okay. If you are time limited, what I will oftentimes do is like a specific story in like 3 to 5 sentences, or your reaction, what's something positive that hit you and what's something negative that hit you, just in a couple sentences. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think if it gets to a point where and this is always what you want to watch for, it's okay as long as the group's okay with it. If anyone in the group is not okay with it, then that's when it has to be addressed and redirected. And if redirection doesn't work, then sometimes you may have to talk to the person individually. And if you've given parameters like a couple sentences or like no more than a minute or two, then if they push back, you can say, well, whenever we were on this topic, me or my co-mentor did say just a couple of sentences. This isn't insulting to you, but we just try to help move the group along. So you have some metrics to be able to go to. The external processor, that's where you need to pay attention as a facilitator. And this is why you will talk less, because if you're talking, you just can't pay attention as well to who is not talking. And the internal processes, they think before where they talk, and they need the time. And sometimes just the external processes give them the time, and that's fine. That's a group that's working okay. But you don't want to forget them. You can ask. I've noticed people have been quiet. With some of the quiet people like to speak up, and I think in a group, and as you're storming, you can call on people's names. That's perfectly fine. You don't want to surprise them, and I think you would say this in the beginning of your group as we move into this topic. Some may talk and some won't, but I'll make sure I will ask you. And if you're just not ready, you're not ready. But they are not present is the point. Just because they're quiet, that doesn't mean they're not present. And they want to be acknowledged as much as anybody else. And that is an acknowledgement to ask them. And again, you may have to mine a little deeper, which is fine. Yeah, those are your two those are challenges you will have in facilitating. You are probably going to, without a doubt, experience some spectrum of this type of personality.
I have to suggest, thanks, Lee. This is really great. An important part of group dynamics. So I'm an external processor, and I have had to learn to not speak. And I was in a class one time. It was a little embarrassing that the person next to me, I think we were friends by then, so that was good, said to me, before you talk next time, ask yourself these 3 questions. I was a little irritated when he first said it to me, but I was very thankful. I'm thanking my former self. Does it need to be said? Does it need to be said now? And does it need to be said by me? And unless I could answer those 3 questions with yes, I really probably should not say it. And the other thing you might do is, if you do have a group that like has some people who speak too much is invite them all to bring journals to their group, and then start your question out with, we're going to just spend 3 minutes just journaling whatever it is that comes to mind. And if you were the first one to speak last time, let someone else speak first this coming time. So just, you can be directive like that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's part of being the authority of a facilitator is, and I've had to learn that, like, you actually do have authority. People expect you to exercise it and are thankful.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not there to be the expert, but you are there to facilitate. And yeah, that they do expect it. Yeah, but I think I'd mention just giving, just not jumping into it. It's like asking a question, saying, let's everyone take a minute and then answer. That can help. That can give a lead to your internal processes. Okay, the next one, the extremely lonely person. Now this can be someone that will dominate, and not just in the external processing way by having to, take everything out of their purse or their wallet to know what they're going to say. This is someone who just needs to be heard for a number of reasons, and it's, as long as they're participating and going along with the group, that's fine. They're alone. They might need a little more encouragement, and that's fine. That can really help a group to be kind and helpful to someone. But if that's always dragged in their direction, or if they shut other people down out of their need, and I've seen it. I've seen people that are like this, that can be rude, can be discounting of other people's opinions. So to bring it back to them, that has to be handled immediately. I mean, you can do it by saying, this is not what we're discussing, or that really isn't the way we agreed. Go back to your norms. And that's something I want to say here. When you get in these sticky situations, I suggest early on, when you do your norms, whatever you do, and then whatever you add, like I said, on ours, we added no party politics. Review them the first couple of sessions. My co-mentor did it last night. It was great. The advantage of that, reviewing them a couple times when you're first forming and into the storming, it makes it easier than if you have to review them because there's a problem. If you pull them out, if you never really review them, and you get like 3 months into something and something's become trouble, and you say, well, let's go to the group norms, it's clear there's a problem. And the person that is going to be, that we'll figure out really quickly that it's probably, they're pulling out the norms because of me. So if you review them throughout, it just becomes a standard thing, and it's helpful. And go through them and say, oh, this is great. Tonight, we really all participated. I like the fact that Frank asked Mary if she had something to say. That's good. You want to do that. So with the extremely lonely person, you do have to just try to redirect it. That's a hard job, and you may need to talk to them at some point, saying, really, this is not what this group's about. It's not therapy. It's for all of us to learn and go deeper. Jennifer?
Yeah. So Dio Dillard has a question. Would it be okay to announce a short break and take the person aside to talk about it rather than to speak to them in front of the group?
Yes. If you can, it's even, if it's really bad there, you can take a short break and do it, or afterwards. If you can make it till to afterwards is good too. But yeah, if it's sometimes it's very subtle. I mean, I have found, it's funny, you can tell the big things, but sometimes you realize, this person is always doing this, but not in a way that is completely stopping the group. Some people, it just, but it can kind of permeate. It's like you realize a couple weeks, it's like, we're always going to this topic. And sometimes you can just redirecting them. Then maybe they'll catch on and stop. So,
Yeah.
so it's subtleties. And that's the thing with facilitation. That's why it's just paying attention, looking for trends of how people behave. We have patterns. We have patterns of speech. We have patterns of how we behave, how we react in situations. Again, Zoom is hard to tell, but you if you're in a group in a room, you will know by how someone's sitting in their chair, how they feel about how someone's saying, yeah, how they move. You can pick up on these things within a couple weeks. So they're just a little niggly things that's in this storming period that if you can redirect the conversation, if someone always tells the story about what happened to them when they were 8, it's like you can say, like, actually I love that story, but let's go back to what we said about how Paul felt in jail. I think they can get it, but you need to do it. I mean, because at the point where the rest of the group is noticing, it's like, oh my God, that story again. They're going to be looking to you. It's like, why you as facilitator are you not noticing? That we're all annoyed here. So
Yeah, I think it depends on also when if that is stopping conversation, you might, instead of naming the behavior, you might, instead of naming the behavior, you might say, I can see that we're getting all a little anxious, or just name it yourself. I'm feeling a little anxious right now, and I need to get up and stretch. I think maybe we could all
yeah
have sort of take it on to yourself. I think that's one thing that if you have some social capital with your group, to own it, to take on that responsibility, and just name it for yourself.
That definitely goes for also the controversial. I mean, if it's really just you're not getting people off of at each other, you just take a break. It's like, look, this is not what we said we're going to do. It's not cool. I'm into this. I need a cookie. Call a cookie break.
And Ron's got a really good question here. What if you as a facilitator are perceived as having overlooked or violated a norm yourself? Should you at the start generally invite the participants to reach out to you separately, or at the time that it happens? To point out the violation at the time it happens.
I probably, yeah. I mean, I think actually at the time that it happens is fine, because that shows I think the main thing is you want the group to feel that they can share. I mean, I always say if you have some concerns, you can always come to me, but I do prefer that we work it out as a group. Don't let your anxiety about a behavior get to the point where someone's really, really on your nerves. Anyone in this group can mention the norms, can go back to the norms. I thank you for asking that, because I should have said that. We're all responsible. As facilitator, I'm really not any more responsible, but I am the lead in terms of paying attention. But we're all, what you want to get to when I get to this actually performing part, we're all responsible. That's when the group is really chugging along, and then also something else that helps is sharing. Again, you don't, as facilitator, like I said, not only you're not an expert, you're not the only one that has to do everything. I mean, have people, I talked about this, have people bring prayer in, have people bring the question in. We always do this. Have people, they will bring in their, for the EFM grads here, or participants, their own theological reflection. Share it. You want to share it. You're no more in charge, per se, in terms of having to plan everything. Get people involved in it, because they participate. They become invested, and they become invested in seeing it succeed, and saying, hey, Lee, you've been talking for 5 minutes about your favorite Bible passage. Is that what we said we were going to do? That's fine. So, okay, the absentee, the expert, yes, that could be me. Yeah, we do. That's true. Episcopalians love to hide our heart behind our head. That's, we've talked, Jennifer, I've been talking about those deeper questions. Just move it back to that, um, as an example here is, you can even say, Paul, that's a great point about the Oxford movement, but that really, it does not relate to the passage we have here from Exodus. It's like,
Or you could say, remind me, how does it, we're talking about Exodus.
yeah, how does, yeah,
Tell us, you can
right.
redirect the question.
Yeah, just redirect it. But I can tell you that some people in the group will love the expert because that keeps them from having to answer that. How did it, hit your heart question. They can just also stay at that level of, oh yeah, well, so tell me more. So what part of the Bible? I see it happens. Like, it's because you don't want to share. You're going to egg this person on. So yeah, just stop it. It's not what you're there for. I see sites on. We're having some good questions pop up. Jennifer, read them to me, and I'll.
They've not no more yet. We've got some slides to get through here.
Yeah, we do. I gotta get moving here. Okay, the absentee participant. Okay, so that can really bring a group down. If someone just doesn't come, you might have to talk to them. If you really want to be here, I always say, we're busy people. We have busy lives, and if you're in a group of retirees, it's fine. If you tell us early on you're going to miss 3 weeks in February because you're going on safari, whatever, that's fine. What isn't fine is to be unprepared to the point where you don't even know what you're supposed to do. Like I said, it's okay to come and say, I'm just not feeling it tonight, but I want to be with you. But if they're not showing up, they're not paying any attention, if they're just missing because they want to stay home and watch Hamilton on Disney, you need to talk to them. It's like, you really need to be in the group. And you want to do that. If that's happening early on, you don't want to drive the group down. This doesn't happen a whole lot, but it can happen. We can go on here.
Okay.
So, yeah, so the griever. Now this is, this will happen if someone comes in and there's an issue. You may decide as a facilitator that particular night you might want to talk about that. It depends on how the group is. You don't want to discount it. You want to be very sympathetic. You may want to talk to them afterwards. You may want to call a break because sometimes you just don't know what's going to come up. I mean, I had a situation where someone let off their TR by finding out that day their wife had a miscarriage. And it's like, that changed the whole dynamic of the evening. But out of respect, I didn't say, oh, we're not doing a TR, we're just talking about that. We went through the steps of the evening, but we all held their pain in our hearts. And that's what you want to do. Then afterwards, I talked to them, I said, I'm sorry. And I asked, would you like me, if you're not going to talk to the rector? So I think that's how you handle it. And those are direct situations that as a facilitator, you definitely want to acknowledge, because you could really hurt someone's feelings by not paying attention to that. And it depends on where your group is, depends on how much they will spend on the evening of that.
Yeah, I think that, I think the thing to remember is the core, if you're clear about your core goals and values when you start, disrupting the group, saying, you know what, I know we were going to do chapter 4 of Philippians, but, this person's parent died or child got in an accident, and just check in with the group, say, is it okay just to lay that aside right now?
Yeah.
We're here to grow together in Christ, and really to remember it's really not about acquiring content. Although that, again, I do know that's really important. It's important in my life. Caring for one another is more important for me. And then just check in with the group, say, everybody good with that? Okay.
And also make sure that the participant's good with that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes they don't want that attention.
Right.
But never assume that the griever wants. That's why I could tell, like when my situation came up, I knew its personality. It wasn't for me to say, oh, let's just, we won't do a TR. Well, other people, maybe you'd say, let's not do a TR. But you as you know your people. That's where the empathy comes in. So after this, you get through all this, you know your people know each other. Then, okay, the liking cohesion slide. Yeah, sometimes these are, if you feel in the group isn't getting it, you can talk about it there. I said reviewing the norms, take breaks. Sometimes, like I said, if it's needed, just take a break. And there's nothing wrong with having moments of silence. It's like, let's just sit in silence and let the evening wash over us. I think stretching is always good. Let's get up and take a stretch break. We need a break here. So the next step.
Continue on.
Yeah, continue on. Sorry, you can't tell what I'm thinking. So this is when you're moving along and the group is working together, but things will pop up. So as the facilitator and leader, just pay attention. This is when you want to still keep going back to your norms sometimes, but they're bonding together and going. Yeah, the norming does. It says live for a while. Yeah, that takes a while. And the performing, it's kind of the same thing. And this is probably a group that's also maybe doing something in of course, in Christian context. So like you said, we want to keep all the intentionality, but they are hitting whatever that ministry's goals were very well. And this is the point where you want to, I would say I use EFM a lot. You want to, you have people that are a number of years, you want to start looking for leaders. This is when the group is working well in whatever it's doing. And you're saying, okay, these people are facilitators in either a co-facilitating mode, to go out on their own, to expand this particular ministry. You as leader have the gravitas to ask them. There's in some degree the responsibility to ask them. That's what I think growing as a facilitator is, to realize it's to be shared. It's not to be hogged. There are people that want to lead just to lead, but really I think leading is learning how to lead others and let others learn to lead. That's when it's most fruitful for everybody. And I highly encourage you to do that. People like to be asked. And don't ever assume, I've learned, that someone's too busy. Let them tell you they're too busy. I don't think people mind being asked. But because I've heard people say, well, I can't ask someone, I know they're really busy. It's okay to ask them. Let them say they're busy. You don't know, and no one else knows how busy someone is and what they may need. So, okay. So that being said, so like I said, adjourning education for ministry is like graduations and you get a diploma and everything. But there are other groups that just kind of ministries, Bible studies, that just hang on because they feel it's a failure to let go or to leave. Like I say, my example is always like altar guilt. It's not a life sentence, but there should be on ramps and off ramps to all these things, and celebrate. When people leave a group, a Bible study, a ministry, and also when it just falls, when there just isn't the interest. But I think it's good for the rest of your church community in some way to know that this was something that flourished and something that finished. And however, lunch, dinner, an announcement in your newsletters or bulletins about this is what was and what can be again. Always an invitation, if 6 people leave a group, maybe one person can start another incarnation. But it is good to acknowledge that this group did this successfully, and we celebrate that. And I don't think we do that enough.
Oops, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, we got to move on here.
Yeah, we
I
wanted
mean,
to have,
yeah, more than I normally do.
have time for our breakouts unless we zip.
Yeah. Let's get to that. So, as we all know, Zoom is challenging. I've talked a lot about a little lack of body language. Managing the conversation really helps by having people, to the degree they can, raise their hands to speak. Your job as a facilitator to be paying attention to that. And taking break, don't go more than 90 minutes. Take breaks, stretch, move around a little bit. Try to, little interaction where you can share screens, do whiteboards, just something other than people just staring at themselves and seeing their mouths move and seeing the back of the room, whatever that is. Yeah, so this is what I talked about. You really don't have, you can't tell as much because you can only see like the top part. So you really don't know someone's postures. You might not know what someone's doing with their hands, and it might not be very good. Eye contact is kinda, but not really good. There's no touch. There's no spatial relationships. You can kind of tell tones of voices. So yeah, so it just makes it a little more challenging to miss these things.
I think it might be helpful maybe to name it for your group, to say, we're
Yeah.
in a new place. It's hard for us so we need to up our self-awareness. And so it'll be harder for me to read the room, like not even in a room, right?
Right, yeah.
But
Actually,
read the room. So much of good facilitation is actually just naming what's happening.
yep.
Right? Being
That's
aware of what's happening. So in this instance, to say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to be able to see if you're tired or need a break. Just use your words, raise your hand, use the chat area. And I mean, that's use
yeah.
your
Chat to all is good. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, be honest. But I forgot that I
that's
was.
just so much of the role of a facilitator is just name what's in the room that nobody else is going to name.
Yep. Yeah, and also yeah, and be honest with what you're feeling too. I mean, you as a facilitator, you can even say, tonight I'm a little out of it. Just I'm not let's 2 degrees. Can you guys like pick up a little bit? I think that's fine. That's actually empowering to the group. I mean, if it just doesn't, I've learned it does not help just to drag through it. Just bring everybody down. Just say it, and it's perfectly fine. You're allowed to. Not every time, but
So one of I put one of the items on this slide, which is I want to mention, make sure we get to, which is break out into groups of 2. And you would never guess that this was going to work, but I was in this 2-day staff retreat. So yay for Episcopal Diocese of Washington for doing things well. So, 2-day retreat online. That was a big heavy lift, but we took breaks every hour. And then before, how maybe I mentioned this and last week, I can't remember. So whenever you're in a building, there's times when you just pass each other on the way to the bathroom or over the table. You have none of that in Facebook. So you've got to figure out what happens so you really do think about this. What happens in my small group that gives life that I don't notice? Coming in through the door together, right? Just leaving together. You just don't have those things. So what we did was we took a break every 50 minutes for a 10-minute break. And so to mimic the passing through the door together or going to the water hole together, they throw us into groups of 2 in a room and with a question. And so that's your standing in line question for each other. And then you did your 10-minute break and came back. So yeah, anyway, that's just sort of one fun way to build online community. And I think you can do that. I think you can even do that. It's you have a once a week Bible study. Just say, you know what? Before we leave, before the Bible study ends or right in the beginning, we're going to throw you in a room randomly for 2 minutes, super, super short. Just how are you doing?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Someone's asked can you suggest endings of online groups when you can't do lunch or dinner? You could do like a video montage of everyone saying what they got out of the group, what they loved about the group, and have that posted like on your webpage.
Yeah. We so when I was teaching at St. Patrick's, I had all the kids for our last time together. It was a world tour of world religions. I had them choose a location like in Nepal or Africa or China, just like somewhere we hadn't been to, we weren't going to go to it, but we could go to it virtually. And I had them load it as their backdrop to their Facebook. And so we would all go on location with Ryan or, Santiago to Peru somewhere, and so we'll say, here I am on location. So you could do that, like have some fun, that, or do a word cloud of gratitude, right? That would be a good way to do it. Do the poll everywhere. There's a unpaid account for that. And have everybody, so yesterday's retreat, have everybody get a candle at home. You're all separate, but you're all doing the same thing. Have a ritual lighting of the candle. A really good thing that in my EFM group, we had, for what was, thanks be to God, for what is, thanks be to God, and for what will be, thanks be to God. We had this refrain that we always used as a way to close things out.
Yeah.
A good question, Sue. And you all know about Padlet and Mentimeter. Those are basically the same kind of thing, like poll everywhere, where that's one way to increase engagement when you're far away from each other.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think we kind of talked about all this stretch, the build-in breaks, the 2 minutes, and yeah, shortened meetings. EFM, well, they were like 3-hour meetings. They're like 1.5 hours now. And I would say really keep your Bible studies, whatever group you're doing, I would say 90 max. Anything over that, definitely take a significant break of 15 minutes to up to half an hour.
And we thank you all for coming. I think I would like to end us in a prayer. This is a wonderful book, Daily Prayer with the Corey Melia Community. I'll add that to the resource list. And it's a prayer for groups. The Lord be with you.
And
also with you.
God of groups, you are within and beyond all of our borders. Our names for you, our words about you, our gatherings, our stories about you. May we always be curious about what is beyond borders, going there gently, knowing you have always been there. We ask this because we know that you are within and beyond all our groups and our stories. Amen.
Amen.